All good stories begin with character and what they want. Most of the Star Trek movies, your heroes are reactive. Malcolm McDowell wants to bend some light so he can go to space heaven. The heroes need to stop him. The Borg want to take over the past. The heroes need to stop them. These wrinkly turds want to kill their cousins. The heroes need to stop them. In suggesting ways I would have tried to fix these movies, we need to concern ourselves with what the villain wants and why the hero needs to stop him. Shinzon, the villain of Star Trek Nemesis, wants to destroy Earth. Why? Some time ago, the Romulans, enemies of the Galactic Federation for a couple of centuries, cloned Jean-Luc Picard in a ploy to replace him and have a spy in the Federation. Then this plan was abandoned and the clone was sent to the mines to die. Seemed like there's an easier way to kill a kid, but whatever. The clone grows up with the Remans, a heretofore unknown lower caste of Romulan society. During the Dominion War, the Romulans used the Remans as cannon fodder against the Dominion, and Shinzon led several military campaigns during this war. Shinzon convinces a Romulan lady to kill the Romulan senators, and Shinzon is now in charge of the Romulan Empire. He tells the Federation he wants to have a sit-down, and since the Enterprise is the closest ship, convenient, Jean-Luc Picard goes to meet him, finding out he's a clone daddy. Shinzon says he wants peace, but the Enterprise finds out he's dealing in deadly radiation. Then he kidnaps Picard to get some of his blood because the cloning process is killing him. But he doesn't seem interested in doing the transfusion, and instead wants to use the radiation to kill everyone on Earth. Which brings us back to why. He and the Remans are tired of bowing down to the Romulans and to the Federation. Okay, but you've already taken over the Romulan Empire. You can start political reform right now. And to the best of my knowledge, the Remans never bowed to the Federation. As far as I know, they didn't even know the Remans existed before this movie. We have a villain who wants revenge, but has no good reason to want revenge. Well, that's not true. The Remans were used as cannon fodder in the Dominion War, so he has a reason to want revenge against the Romulans. But he barely interacts with them, and spends all his screen time screwing with the Enterprise. All it would take is one scene to fix this movie. Shinzon doesn't think the blood transfusion will save his life, and wants to spend what time he has tearing down the Romulan Empire, and the best way to do that is to start a war between them and the Federation by destroying the Federation's crown jewel, so other Federation planets will want revenge and come after the Romulans. But I'm not going to do that because then this would be like a 2-minute video. It wouldn't fix everything, but at least with our villain's motivation, it would be a significant improvement. A more challenging fix would be to have him genuinely be interested in peace and still have him be antagonistic. The Cardassians and the Klingons suffered major casualties in the Dominion War, leaving the Federation and the Romulans as the two big powers in the aftermath. The Romulans would have no reason to want to play nice now just because they had common enemies with the Federation in the Dominion. They're still scheming just like they had been throughout TNG and the original series. That pushes Shinzon into making a move against the Romulans. Ambassador Worf of the Klingon Empire reluctantly comes to Romulus to facilitate aid, as the Romulans have had a series of mysterious crises since the end of the war. So while they were happy to see the Klingons picking up the pieces in the aftermath, many Romulan higher-ups aren't too proud to ask for help. Why Worf? He has friends in high places in the Federation, so if the Romulans are sincere in their begging, he can grease the wheels that much quicker. One of the politicians Worf is meeting was probably involved in the clone project before it was discarded, and has now moved up and is corrupt in some other aspect of Romulan government. There's an assassination, Worf glimpses someone running away on a rooftop, he gives chase, manages to catch up long enough to see Shinzon's face before he escapes. Worf didn't know Picard at this age, but if you ever looked at a picture of your grandparents when they were younger, they look different, but you can still recognize them. It's once again Worf pulling the Enterprise into this adventure. Yes, I did that in my fix on Insurrection, and yes, I am again replacing data antics as I see no reason for the crew to find one of Noonien Soong's data prototypes. Thematically, it parallels Picard having a double, but in the narrative, this subplot raises questions it has no interest in answering. I've tried to minimize Data's importance in a couple of my other fixes, but this time, Brent Spiner was credited with at least part of the story. Not sure how much. I read he insisted Data be killed off because he didn't feel like he could continue playing an ageless android. So I probably have to give Data a little bit more to do in this one than I have in some of my other Star Trek fixes. I like the idea that everyone is moving on with their lives and careers. Playing into this idea, Picard is an admiral, despite James Kirk's warning. Like Worf, Picard wasn't comfortable with a promotion, but recognized that his diplomacy was needed. Many Starfleet higher-ups died in the war, and who better to help guide the Federation when she needs it most? Captain Riker and the rest of the crew will be called in as bodyguards for Worf and Picard as they try to get to the bottom of what's happening. They'll need some manpower if this is as bad as Worf thinks it is, and they're both comfortable with this crew, so better them than another ship. As we've already covered, these movies are reactive, but the other movies were pretty black and white with what the crew needed to do. Even in my attempts at adding nuance to Insurrection, it was still clear what the crew needed to do. But I'd want to shake that up with this one. Picard lost what was left of his family right before Generations. Seeing he now has essentially a son he never knew about should be a much bigger deal than what it was. Yeah, Shinzon admitted to killing too many Romulan, so it wasn't easy for Picard to open his arms to him, but after the scene where they talk about their differences and similarities, the movie is in a hurry to get to Shinzon twirling his mustache evilly. Since I didn't have Picard going rogue in my version of Insurrection, what if he went rogue here? When Picard finds out Worf was right and he has a clone running around, he escapes from the others to try to find out who he is and why he's doing this. This is your classic duty versus love conflict, which I'm not sure we ever got to see Picard go through. It'd be crazy to see Picard spitting in the face of values he held high for so long, but in these circumstances, I could see him doing that. Act 2 would have Picard taken into Shinzon's group. Instead of this group being a bunch of no-dimensional monsters, Shinzon's group are refugees from different species, left without homes or lives from the war. Maybe he even has a wife and a kid to continue with the idea of Picard's family coming back after being taken from him in generations. Shinzon does not see Picard as an enemy to be eliminated, but as an almost mythical figure he never thought he would get to meet, and wants to learn all he can about him before he dies. In my version, he does not need Picard's blood because it won't do him any good. His days are numbered, and that's why he's eliminating corrupt Romulan politicians to do some last-minute good before it's too late. Picard doesn't condone what Shinzon is doing, but he sees why he's doing it. Picard tries to convince Shinzon this isn't the way to do it, as he might make things worse, especially if the Romulans find out a human was killing their higher-ups. That might kick off another war after everyone wants to move away from war. Shinzon considers what Picard says. He doesn't want another war, but he's hot-headed, like Picard at that age. He's not stupid, like he was in the movie. He looks anywhere from 9 to 12 when they sent him into the mine, so he should have had years of training to one day be ready to replace Picard, which should have been brilliant enough to fool Picard's closest coworkers. Even with a life very different from what Picard had, he still had a lot of training to become Picard, so a lot of Picard's skills and diplomacy, Shinzon should have some of that. But he doesn't see that diplomacy will do any good because he knows that it is a very slow process and he won't live long enough to see it play out. While Picard is trying to guide Shinzon to a less violent path, Riker and Worf are looking for Picard, trying to convince some Romulan governor not to press charges against Picard. Their security cameras caught Shinzon's face when Worf met him, so they're super suspicious of Picard. He's not here, so what's going on? Officially, Riker has put out an APB to find and arrest Picard. They have to play nice with the Romulans on their home turf and trying to keep things civil after a big war, but they know if Picard is not answering his phone, it's probably for a good reason. Since we're going for the idea of change for a few of our crew members, Data will be not necessarily struggling with the idea, but questioning it. He's spent 15 years with these people, most of them staying stagnant in their careers, so the idea Picard would ever not be the captain, that was never a thought he entertained much. Even though he was a capable leader when the need arose, he needs to get used to the idea of permanently being the one calling the shots in the field, while Riker is commanding at the ship. While everyone seems from where Data is standing at ease with moving forward into new roles, we will see what it means for Data, an unaging, unchanging organism, to reevaluate his own position and his quest to try to act more human. The Romulan Shinzon has been picking off are all involved in a scheme, and now that so many enemies of the Empire are right here, the ones who are left are thinking it's time to move their timetable. Data will be investigating the crime scenes that brought them here in the first place, and he will find something everyone else missed, or possibly something the Romulan investigators deliberately didn't find. In addition to a sect of Romulans planning against the Federation, you've got trouble in paradise with some Romulans scheming against other Romulans. Data found traces of some deadly element, not enough to kill, but enough to deteriorate skin cells on some of Shinzon's victims. This points to Thaleron, illegal as per the Space Geneva Convention, and Data suspects the Romulans are planning what Shinzon wanted to do in the movie, use the radiation to kill off the enemies of the Romulan Empire. Act 3 can be your big shootout, with an added layer of which Romulans can we trust. Are some of them going to believe Riker and Data's findings that a sect of the Romulan government is up to something? The crew ends up at the facility where the Thalaran radiation is coming from, arriving right at the same time Shinzon and his crew are getting there. Shinzon is here because he found Picard's friends hanging with one of Shinzon's other targets, and he wants to make sure they're not in cahoots with his enemies. When the really bad Romulans figure out the game is up and they've been discovered, one of them will try to shoot Riker, and Data will take the bullet. Data's willingness to sacrifice himself to save a fellow officer was one of the other things I liked about the movie, so we're still using that, just changing it to Riker instead of Picard. My gut said Shinzon should die, saving Picard in a similar fashion, but as much of a cantankerous Scrooge as I am, the TNG era can end with a dash of brightness, even with Data's death. With a secret plot uncovered, the not quite as evil Romulans will have what's left of the sinister cabal arrested. There's terse thanks all around for a job well done. As Shinzon uncovered a plot to reignite a galactic war, the Romulan governor agrees to pretend like he's disappeared in all the chaos. Dr. Crusher says while his condition is critical, she might be able to give him a few more years than what he thought. Plenty of time for he and Picard to catch up on the years they've lost. We get a nice wake for Data, and that's it. I went into making this thinking I hated Nemesis a lot more than I think I actually did. It has some good parts, but they're drowned by a lot of bad parts. I hope you like this one, and I'll be back later with something else. Until then, have a good one.